The student becomes the teacher.
It was 20 and ones, and you would do the stripper shuffle.
So my dad actually got held up and basically locked in a bathroom and then robbed.
God, I had social anxiety at a level that was just ridiculous, and I didn't see how that was ever going to change for me. Well, welcome back to the We Freak Out podcast. Episode 4 is jam-packed with stories and wisdom from one of my personal mentors, Mr. CK Scott. We didn't even have enough time to get through all the questions that he and I had for each other, so definitely expect a part 2 somewhere down the road. Okay, well, let's get right into it. A quick warning, give the audio about 30 seconds to straighten out at the beginning. In the heat of the excitement of the prank that I opened the podcast with, I totally forgot to hit record on our actual microphones. Okay, that's all I got for you. Enjoy a very special conversation with my good friend, CK. I have color-coded mic covers I got for this one. In that bag, can you just grab this?
Oh, yeah.
I took it all the way over there so I can grab them.
Color-coded, baby.
They're right inside that cloth. I thought that was the best way to
gotta be kidding me right now.
But what just happened? Show the people what just happened.
Wow.
I thought that was better than a hey, how you
When
doing?
the student becomes the teacher. Unbelievable.
Okay, so we've started out with an icing. I'm not going to let you drink alone, though. I'm going to get mine. I know you have a massive deficit, don't you?
How did you know? You did your research here. So I do have a deficit. I currently am out of the icing game, meaning I'm only on. I only can be iced. I cannot ice another soul until I pay up on my debt.
And that works out for me, so we're good.
Yeah. So my soul was completely broken, and honestly, this might kill me because, oh my gosh.
I won't force it on you. I didn't expect you to make a cocktail as soon as we sat down.
I was like, oh, we're going to do a podcast. Like, I might make me a nice little whiskey drink and we'll have some sip of whiskey. No, I'm going to hit this.
Okay.
Jim, this isn't Nom. There are rules and I will follow them. But I just want you to know this is like not what I wanted to do right now. But anyway.
Is there ever a good time for an ice?
No. But
icing?
No, that's why you're the only person I know that drinks Smirnoff Ice because you actually like Smirnoff Ice.
Make sure you look into the camera while you drink this while I introduce you. All right, so
hold on. I'm on a knee. I toast to Jesse O'Ryan Gonzalez, the man, the myth, the legend.
So, episode 4 of the We Freak Out podcast. Today we are interviewing longtime friend, brother, boss. This is Christopher CK Scott. And damn, dude, you have put that thing down quick. You feel good?
Not my best work. Gave it the old college try, though.
All right, now you're all loosened up. Not as nervous as you were before.
Let's see if these acoustics work. Yep. Heard it in my headphones.
So I just want to hit the heavy-hitting questions right away. Did you hit the gym today?
Gosh, why you got to call me out like that, Jesse? That's messed up. I did not get my swole on. I have a messed up hand. Just had surgery on it a few days ago, and it's really, you know what? I'm making excuses. I can't feel sorry for myself. I could have done leg day. Could have tried.
I see dudes with one arm doing cleans.
Great point.
Yeah.
The only disability is a bad attitude, and right now, all I brought to you is a bad attitude. I could have been working on getting my glutes tight like yours. Could have been doing any multitude of things, but instead, I was making excuses. Well, thanks for calling me out on that, Jesse. No.
My pleasure. What are you recovering from?
Man, I still in my mind think I'm a young man, that I'm 20. And so I go out and live my life as such. And it's just a silly injury. But one of my favorite things to do is play basketball. And I was playing a pickup game of basketball and ended up tearing a ligament in my thumb. And how many times have you jammed your thumb or done or any multitude of things to your hand, and it takes a month or two to fix, and then it's all of a sudden better.
Right.
So I kept thinking, this thing's going to get better any day now, and it just kept being angry and aggravated, and my knuckle on my thumb was just 3 times the size of the other. So I finally went and saw an orthopedist, and said, yeah, you tore your ligament. You're going to need some surgery. So that was about as far as he went in the description of what was going on. And so I signed myself up for surgery thinking, they're going to make like a tiny little incision and then sew it up and I'll be in and out. In fact, I made meetings for later that afternoon. And anyway, I'm getting down a rabbit hole here, but at any rate, I end up showing up for this surgery and the doctor comes in and starts drawing all over my hand with marker. And I kind of look at the doctor. I said, "Can you kind of tell me what this procedure is? Like, what's going to happen here? Because I really don't have any information." He's like, "Oh yeah, well, you have a full rupture of your ligament on your thumb, and we're gonna cut you from stem to stern basically, and go in there and drill holes and patch you up." And I looked at my wife and I was like, "I don't know if I want to do this."
Yeah,
like I think I'll live with the irritated thumb. Anyway, ended up following through with it, but now I have this silly thing on my hand for the next 10 weeks. So
it's like when you go in for a filling and they tell you the tooth has to come out.
I've never had that happen, but that would be devastating. Can I put this on the ground now? Or is there really a mic cut? That's
there's nothing. There's nothing.
By the way, that was such a good trick because for everybody who's watching this on YouTube or whatever platform that they actually can see, this setup is the most Jesse thing ever. There's color-coded stickers with the color-coded wire. Everything is like paint to match. The most detailed, amazing, immaculate setup, which of course that's what you're known for. So when you told me there was color-coded mics like covers, it didn't. Dude, I would have never thought you were trying to.
I don't know if you saw me panicking there for a sec. When I was driving, I didn't have the idea until I was passing that Chevron right there to pull over and buy 2 ice.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So on the way over here, I was like, okay, I'll tell him that my mouse is in there. And then I sit down like, God, I already have my mouse. What else could I possibly need? Well, dude, this time last year, maybe it was more like July, we had a hot tub party, pool party to celebrate building our very first spirit store of the season. And you were absolutely shredded and your abs were the talk of the party. What was and what is, before your surgery, your thumb screw up, what's your routine, your fitness routine? What's that look like?
Bro, you're making me feel so bad about myself right now. And I very much appreciate that compliment because truly that was what I'll consider my all-time life peak conditioning I've ever been in. I have never been a person that's been great at nutrition, never had a gym regimen, just never had those types of systems and processes in place. And a couple of years ago, I was at an all-time low physically and just hated the way that I felt about myself and my lack of routine and just drinking too much, eating the wrong stuff, which is 90% of it. And then also just no consistency in working out at the gym. And so I decided at that point, like I need to make some quantum changes in what I'm doing with my life because first of all, now I have kids and like it changes your whole like purpose for living. And now like I want to be able to throw a ball with my kids. I want to be able to go and have lake days and whatever it is that I want to do. I want to be able to do that. I don't want my limiting factor to be my body. So when I saw you last year, I was working with a personal trainer who was amazing.
That was the dude that I worked with at Define Fitness, right? What was his name again?
The most small world thing. So actually, the one that you worked with was my second trainer. My first trainer, his name was Dwayne Yardman. I believe that was his last name.
Dude, if your trainer's name is Dwayne, you're good to go.
Dwayne the Train, man. That guy was awesome. He was a guy that you could tell didn't have like the natural body type physique to be like this legendary fitness athlete. Mm-hmm. He was a scrawny, he showed me pictures of him like from years previous. He's just like this scrawny little guy that just learned the process to build his body and got passionate about it and turned himself into a machine. And that was really inspiring to me because I'm like, this isn't a guy that's like 6'4" and jacked, right. That doesn't have a body type like me. This is a guy that, I think came from, probably not having many of the natural physical attributes to be a specimen like he was. I was like, well, that's me, man. I don't have the deepest gene pool. I need a guy that knows what it's like to start from kind of scratch. So at that point, I didn't know how to work out, didn't know any exercises, didn't know much about really how to turn my life around. But I went to this outfit, which actually I found on Instagram just while I was mindlessly perusing. One of my friends who's an influencer, she was doing some workouts at this place. It's called Dash 121 at the time. So I kind of just hit her up and I said, Erin, you look great. Because she was always a beautiful woman, but like she was posting stuff that she was toned. I mean, she looked strong. She
like
looked
stage ready?
Not stage ready, but just healthy, like
Gotcha.
Strong, feminine, like lean, muscular build. And I had gone to school with her probably 5 years prior to that. And like I said, she's always beautiful, but she wasn't ever like this muscular, chiseled person. And so she really inspired me to look into this Dash 121 place, because I hit her up on Instagram and I said, hey, I noticed that you're working out at this facility. First, the facility looks amazing, but like also you look amazing and you look healthy, and tell me a little bit about it. And she said, well, the benefit of this place is, yes, it's expensive, but it's personalized one-on-one training and it comes with a nutrition coach. And both of those things I acknowledged were like massive gaps that I had. I didn't have any knowledge to, even if I wanted to go to get a defined fitness membership, I wouldn't know what exercises to even do. And so anyway, I knew I needed to just invest in myself. Like, I don't care how much it costs, I'm gonna just do it because I need to do this for myself. So after probably a year of basically paying a car payment to this place, I really learned how to work out. And I learned a lot about myself from a nutrition perspective, which was probably which I learned actually was the bigger thing. They incorporated a lot of like really a holistic approach to it, where they took blood work and looked at everything from like, what is your testosterone levels?
Dang.
What are your vitamin deficiencies? And then they asked me like really crazy personal questions about my lifestyle, eating habits, all those things. And then they created this framework of nutrition that really, from that, I learned that I had a thyroid disease called Hashimoto's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and basically it's a gluten intolerance. And that causes like constant bloating, constant inflammation. You never feel good. And so what she did like right away was get me on this path of, okay, like let's take an approach of figuring out what foods you react well to and what foods you don't. And then let's find alternatives. I don't want to steer you away from things you really love, because it shouldn't be like, your nutrition shouldn't be something you hate to do. It should be like, let's build a lifestyle around the things you already love, but let's create like kind of easy substitutions for that. And it was life-changing for me. I look at myself now though, I think when you're talking about was actually 2 years ago.
Was it really?
I think so, because honestly, like after Dwayne, when I saw you, I was working with him. Why can't I remember his name? He was great.
Yeah, I can never remember his name either. I love the guy.
He was a personal trainer that you had met along your journey when you were...
When I was a personal trainer.
When you were
we were coworkers. Yeah.
And he was great too. So anyway, Dwayne ended up leaving and going to start his own thing at another gym. But I really loved the Dash community because of the nutrition and everything. And I loved the owner of that gym. So I stayed on, got with a new trainer who was your buddy, and I'm embarrassed to say that I can't remember his name because I worked with him for such a long time. But he was a totally different type of trainer. So Dwayne was more like, okay, let's walk before we run, but let's concentrate on low weight and great like mechanical movements. Like, let's make sure we do low weight but flawless, and let's do high repetition of that, and let's incorporate tons of cardio. Next guy he was like the bulk master, right? Like he was the David Hasselhoff in old school Baywatch.
I remember his body like a V. Like he just has these massively broad shoulders.
Yes. And I'm hoping that his name comes to me before this podcast ends, because like if he ever listens to this, I'm gonna be so embarrassed. But he got me into what I'll call like the actual weightlifting and bulking part of it. Like I had never really lifted heavy, and I'd never done like Olympic lifting. And so he got me into that. And that's where I really started seeing like, okay, I'm not only shredding fat, but now I'm really building muscle. And I started seeing quick results in that. And it was addicting, because I had never seen my body react that way. And this isn't like doing anything crazy special. I was working out with this guy 3 times a week, and then I bought a Peloton, and I was riding that Peloton pretty consistently, and my body just morphed. And I loved the results. And so that kind of led me down that journey. And now I'm sitting comfortably with my dad bod. That gym ended up closing down. I lost my personal personal coach, my accountability buddy, and my buddies, and I've fallen back to a lot of my old routines. So you're going to inspire me though to get back to my glory days.
Dude, I'm trying. I end every single workout with glute thrusts just to be your inspiration. Yeah. And I thought, the whole reason I asked this question was because I was pretty sure you were going to say I inspired you. But I guess those hip thrusts were for nothing, but good for Aaron. That's awesome.
I did say that at the beginning of when I started talking. I said, you're making me feel bad about myself because I could have been getting my butt looking tight like yours, or my glutes. I said glutes. I didn't want to say butt, but yeah, you got a great little booty, Jesse.
Well, dude, so yeah. Dwayne actually like started you out with the basics, and that, seriously, I didn't sneak any pictures at that pool party, but what a testament to how quickly a person can change their body around. Because you went from, you're saying literally not knowing anything about the gym, to a transformation like that over the course of what, like a year and a half, a year?
Yeah, and honestly, that you're 100% right about that. But I have used that transformation now as an analogy for so many parts of my life, like consistent effort in any direction for a prolonged period of time creates results.
Yeah, 1% at a time.
No matter what. And it really broadened my perspective about what was possible. And I started saying yes to things that I wouldn't normally say yes to because I felt physically unable. I'm like, no, like it's time to push myself, and your body will figure it out. And I've been really blessed that I surround myself with some really healthy and active people that like to do cool stuff. And many of the people I work with at Abrazo Homes specifically, we have a group that's called Challenge Accepted. And it's a monthly challenge, and anybody can throw out a challenge. And if you say no to 2 challenges, you're out.
Dang.
So it's just say yes to no matter whatever it is, right? And so like last month we did a half mile of lunges. And it was brutal.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And so the next day I was so sore. I can't even tell you how sore I was. But I was so proud of myself for still doing it. It's like Challenge Accepted is just about saying yes to things that you don't want to do, but you're going to do it anyway. And I'm by far like the dad bod of all dad bods here at Browns. One of these guys is, he played professional football. Another guy was a collegiate track athlete. Brian played basketball in college. Like all these guys are D1 athletes or better. And then there's me. And so they're always like pushing me well beyond my comfort zone, but I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I can hang. The mind is stronger than my mind is stronger than my body, and your mind can push you through so many more things than you think it can.
For sure. That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, let's take it back to a big yes that set the course of both of our lives. If I'm not mistaken, from what I read online, Seasonal Magic, the kind of holding company for Spirit Halloween, which is how we met and why we've known each other for so long, was founded in 1993. So we're looking at, I think, the 30th anniversary this year that's been a thing. Tell us how Spirit Halloween here in New Mexico, or here in the Southwest America, has grown into this Halloween empire. How did that start? What was the inception of Halloween here in New Mexico?
God, man, I don't truly capital G God. Like, it was by the grace of Him. Like, it was a blessing that came at the right time, and that my parents had the charisma and fortitude and just I'll say it like this: they had the balls to try. But the way it came about was, my dad is, and mom really have always been entrepreneurial, but they were kind of a hard luck story. So, all throughout my childhood and well before, I'm the youngest, they really struggled financially. And they took on all these different endeavors that they were passionate about. Like at one time they owned a radio station and a newspaper in this small town called Safford, Arizona. And my dad was this amazing, he had a morning show and he ran this newspaper, sold all the advertising, and he had this amazing charismatic personality and people always were like magnetized to him.
And he still does.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And he was so good at that, but he was just like, he was this big thing in a small market and it was really hard to monetize, and they put their life savings into it. And even though it was amazing, it never went anywhere. And so kind of tail tucked between their legs, my dad took a bunch of like odd end jobs, just trying to provide, he worked at Keebler, stocking shelves, and he had, and still has, sleep apnea, but this is before sleep apnea was a thing and people really knew what sleep apnea was. And so I have these vivid memories of driving in the car with my dad and him just full on falling asleep while driving. And because of this, he had a really hard time holding a job. And so he's constantly bouncing around from job to job. And although he is this amazing person, he couldn't hold a job because he wasn't getting any sleep. And his vital organs were literally shutting down when this science behind sleep apnea started coming about, and they learned about CPAP machines and all of this. Anyways, so during this time, he was, my mom was working in economic development up at the state in Santa Fe, and she was driving every day, and she was really the breadwinner of the family. Again, my dad couldn't hold a job, and sacrificing so hard. I remember these are the type of memories that really inspire me, if I'm being honest. But I remember she had this Bronco 2. That's the car that's burned into my memory of my mom in my childhood. And I remember that the starter didn't work on it, but it was a manual transmission vehicle, and we didn't have the money to fix the starter. And so we always had to park on a downhill so that we could push the car so she could pop the clutch to start it. And my dad, as best as he and my dad is the most amazing person. Like, he really is. He's one of these guys that is so selfless, and everything has really always been for his family. And he was grasping at straws to keep jobs and just couldn't get it. And he ended up working as he was managing these Allsup's gas stations and Circle K's and wherever else. Like, it was literally just convenience store to convenience store. And as the story goes, of course, I have no recollection of this actually happening because they shielded it from me. But my dad actually got held up. He was working a graveyard shift at one of these convenience stores and got held up and basically locked in a bathroom and then robbed. And it was like the ultimate wake up call for him. And it was also like this, like I could have died, and here I am working in these convenient, like my life has to amount to something more than what it is right now. And around this time, and my dad's always been kind of he's a connections guy, much the way that I am. Like people have always been his passion. And he had this long-lasting friendship with this couple, Tamara and Joe Marver. Well, Joe Marver and Tamara, they lived in the Bay Area in California, and they had these dress shops, like bridal dress shops, and they were decently successful. But Joe Marver was like this ultimate. I think he was a Jewish man, but he was like this savant businessman. He was always looking for the next thing. And I don't know how he came upon the concept of Halloween, but somehow he came about this idea that he wanted to start a specialty Halloween retailer. And he cracked the code. So evidently these dress shops, they have a lull in the fall. And so he would convert his dress shops into these Halloween stores, and he would buy these Halloween goods from, Halloween conventions or overseas. He built a network in which he could buy Halloween goods. And much to his delight, and I think somewhat surprise, the stuff was selling. It was selling really well, because at that time, Halloween was kind of just a gimmick. Like it was maybe an aisle in Walmart, but there was no true specialty store that's all they focused on. And so he just saw this little niche in the market and was by all means, very successful. So he started thinking about how he could grow this business and develop kind of what we'll call a franchise model. And he started reaching out to his connections, and he put together this VHS tape that he would send to his friends basically and say, like, here's what we're doing. Let me know if you want to be a part. And Joe stopped through Albuquerque, and at least this is the way that I've heard the story, and I hope I'm recounting it correctly, and gave my dad this VHS tape, and they popped it in, and my dad immediately, again, he's grasping for anything that's some like glimmer of hope for him to do something other than what he's doing now. And he's like, man, like, I think I could do that. Like this is kind of cool. It's kind of niche, and I think this is something that I would like to try. And so Joe said, if you want to do this, you need to come and spend a Halloween season out with me and really learn the business. And so he had a handful of these, and he actually had some really, really amazing people that he had hired to help build this business. And many of them are still to this day working there. Like Ann Sullivan, who you have met at some of these spirit meetings in New Jersey and stuff. She's an OG. Like wow. She's been since the very beginning. And so anyway, he brought my dad out, and my dad couldn't believe it. He's like, we're on these old Casio registers, and people are buying these little rubber, cockroaches and squeaky rats and crazy stuff. And he's like, it was the most fun I've ever had. And he was super inspired by that time there. But again, we had no money. And when I say no money, I'm like, we had the opposite of money. And so we didn't have the funds to even start this thing off. And so what Joe came up with was actually really brilliant. And it's really the foundation that catapulted Spirit Halloween into what it is now. But he created what is known as a consignment operation. And a lot of people say, like, they know about the consignment idea, right? Like, you can consign your furniture. Like, I own this piece of furniture, but I want to sell it, so I'll take it to this showroom, and I'll sell my furniture at this showroom, and then the showroom will keep a certain amount of whatever I sold it for. Right. And so, like, that was a very traditional consignment model. It's where the person who owned the shop really didn't own any of the stuff that was in the building, but they got a cut of whatever they sold.
Right.
And whatever they didn't sell, well, they would send it back and they would get credit for it. Or they would say, look, we didn't sell it, so take your couch back out of this furniture store. And so Joe, being the savant that he was, he didn't really want financing to be the barrier to help his friends achieve this goal of, of expanding this business. And so he developed this consignment model for Halloween where he would foot the bill for the merchandise. Now you would have to go and you'd have to secure a location, and you would have to pay your employees, and you would have to pay your insurance and all of these things. But the product itself, he owned it. And if you sold it, you would keep a portion of the proceeds, and the rest of it would go to him. And it was great because it allowed people who had not a lot of money to really get their foot in the door with a pretty minimal startup cost. And so my parents went to my grandfather and asked him for a small loan, which allowed us to get our first lease and pay our employees and kind of get it off the ground. And Joe would send the semi truck full of Halloween goods, and we would sell what we could, and then we would send back what we couldn't. And the store was by no means like a barn burner. Like, it wasn't like this instant success, but we sold some. And although I don't know that we made any money that first year, or I don't know that we made money the first 10 years, honestly, but wow. It gave my dad this glimmer in his eye where he had control of his destiny, and he wasn't working for the man anymore, and he had control of who he hired. He had control of what spaces he was going to, like, it was the perfect fit for him and his skill set. And since then, I mean, every single year they've added store after store after store. And so that's really just the way it started. It was first my mom and dad bootstrapping it, and the kids, my brother, sister, and I just causing havoc in the store. And basically that was our free daycare. And then we were child labor. And then we've just kind of grown up in this business. And the other thing that I have to commend my parents for is they've used this business as a conduit to instill in us so many values that I think otherwise are so hard as a parent to instill in a child. And I can't tell you what a blessing this company, this business has been for us as we've grown it, because now, like, it's a third generation, right? Like, I'm bringing my kids into these stores. And anyway, to get back, this is my ADHD mind working. Like, get back to where I was talking about, like, to my parents should be commended, is they knew about the multiplication of effort. And they knew to grow this, they needed my brother, my sister, and I to take big roles, to take ownership, and they needed to give us wings and then let us fly so that we could grow this business way faster than him and my mom could. So it's awesome because, all three, my brother, sister, and I, we all worked for my dad. I have very vivid memories of my dad and his management style, which in many ways still guides me to this day. And then I worked for my sister, because then, now my sister became a store manager. She's 8 years older than me. So little brother's working for big sister. And then sister goes off to college, or sister moves to a different city. Now sister starts a store of her own in new city. Now I'm working for big brother, who's 6 years older than me. So now I'm working under my brother. I'm learning his management style. I'm now working with a totally different style of leadership. And then boom, Brennan's gone. He goes to law school at UNLV, and he's starting to sprout his own little branches out in Las Vegas and starts growing the business out there. And now little CK turns 18 and really like I didn't deserve it. I was not mature enough to be running a store, and I made so many mistakes. And actually, I remember it was ridiculous. But anyway, to kind of reel this back in, my dad first allowed me to be, and I'll put air quotes in the air, an assistant manager at 16 years old, 17 years old, we'll call it. It was like a junior in high school. I had zero business doing that. But it was, looking back, it's all about raising baby birds, right? It's all about, no, you have to take ownership of this and you better grow up quick because like we need you. And that particular year, we had this gentleman named Jason Mesta who had worked under my dad for years and years. And he had moved with his family up to Colorado, but I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but he was unemployed for a period of time. And so my dad convinced Jason to come down and manage the store, and somehow convinced him that me being his assistant manager would be a good idea. So Jason moves down from Colorado, lives with us in my house and in my brother's bedroom. Again, my brother had left for college, and he's living at the house with me. And I'm going to school during the day and then showing up after school and working nights and weekends as his air quote assistant manager. And what it really amounted to was Jason was managing the store open to close, and 7 days a week. And at some point, desperation, as you've been through this grind, it's completely inconceivable to work open to close 7 days a week for an entire Halloween season. Nobody is built for that. This is like the grind of all grinds. So he had to acquiesce to allowing me to run the store, but for short periods, but just so he could get some sort of time to rejuvenate and recharge his system. Every single time he would leave me in charge, catastrophic failures.
Oh, no.
I'm not kidding either. And like, I can't imagine now looking back, and I would love to, I need to talk to Jason about this because I would love to get his perspective on all this. I can't imagine how stressful that was for him, but also I can't imagine how mad he was at my dad. And I have this vision ingrained in, like, I have this memory ingrained in me. And well, it's really two. The first one was Jason's dad lived in El Paso, and he drove to Albuquerque to go eat dinner with him. And so Jason's like, all right, I'm going to go eat dinner with my dad. Like, you're in charge. Basically, like, just don't let the place burn down, I got this, I was so full of myself.
Right.
It's no problem, And by the time he came back, so during that time, like, Spirit has always like had its protocol and exactly how these stores are supposed to operate. And like, you have a certain vibe that's supposed to exist in these stores. And at that time, it was these CDs called Midnight Syndicate. That was the only soundtrack that could play in the store. And it was these they were actually wonderful soundtracks. But I decided, 17-year-old TK decided, like, nah, I'm so sick of hearing these Midnight Syndicate jams. We're turning on Kiss 97.3, the most hip hop and R&B in this thing. And so I decided I was going to jam out Kiss 97.3, the most hip hop and R&B, at like level 11. And he comes in, and I remember the look on his face of just disbelief that I turned Spirit Halloween into Club Spirit, and like, also, I really was turning off the customers. Like, they were coming in and it was hip hop, and they came in to a Halloween store. That's not what the expectation of the customer was. And looking back on that now, I totally get it, of course. Definitely. But he was so upset at me at that moment. The next time was this was an old home base. So home base is way before your time, but it was before Home Depot existed, home base, but same size warehouse, home improvement store type of a deal. We were using 10,000 square foot of a 100,000 square foot building. And I was just club mess around all the time. And so I was like, well, there's this great big area to drift cars back there. So I invite my buddies over and we bring our cars in there. And we're just absolutely doing donuts.
While the store's open?
This is after hours, but like, you know, still being idiots. And this is as like camcorders were just getting big. And so we wanted to film everything. And like, this is also when like Jackass was big. And so it was like all of a sudden cool to just do idiotic, stupid things. And so we were just in there being complete, absolute idiots in there. And recording ourselves doing it, like totally incriminating ourselves. So it was like, it was after work one night and Noel comes over and we're so excited to watch the footage we had created. And we're in there and it's like screeching tires and just us being complete idiots. And Jason comes in and he's like, what are you watching here?
Because he's in the bedroom right next door.
Yeah. And it's just us like being so immature and idiotic in the store. And he's like, you know, like this is the type of stuff that can make your family lose everything that they've worked for.
Wow.
And I looked at him and was like, well, what do you mean? Like, of course, I never thought it at that level. And he's like, you have a responsibility, not only to yourself, but like to your entire family. Like, what if somebody hit that pole? Or like, what if somebody got ran over? Like, you get sued, you lose everything. And like, I mean everything, your house and everything. And that was one of these like pivotal moments where I'm like, this is why my dad put me in this position, to make these mistakes, to feel exactly how I feel now, to learn that lesson so I never do this crap again. And so to tie it all back, like I give my parents tremendous amount of credit for giving someone who shouldn't have been in that position that kind of leadership and responsibility, knowing that I was going to fail, knowing I was going to disappoint them, knowing that I could jeopardize their ability to make a living in perpetuity.
Right.
But wanting that growth experience for me and wanting that from my brother and from my sister. And that brings me to you, honestly. Like, if we can rewind this track back a little bit, and now I'll kind of turn the tables a bit to you. Spirit Halloween was your first job, if I can remember right, or if not your first job, but maybe your first real job.
Yeah.
And I remember you and Gids coming in, and you were these rocker. We called you the rocker twins, right? Like you had this. Yep. This is when you pull up picture of Jesse and Gids
I got a bunch.
with their rocker hair, and you guys were these right. You're the generation younger than me, so you're kind of this anomaly at this time where I don't really understand what motivates you guys or really how to communicate with that generation yet. But you guys were like, you just had a drive a bit different than anybody else that we hired that year. And I remember the manager that year was a friend of mine, Kim Amlung. And she just loved you. Like every time that I called for an update about how are things going in the store, it was constant praise about the rocker twins. And so I think at that time you're maybe 16, 15?
15 turning 16 my first year. And then that year under Kim, 16 turning 17.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So that was your second year that you worked under Kim.
Yeah.
So then it came, and now this is our busiest store in Albuquerque, which is actually one of the busier stores in the whole country at this time. And Kim was a phenomenal manager. And she had, the year prior was kind of a disaster. Like she had to fire her assistant managers, like as Halloween business kind of goes, right? There's always the reaper around the tree looking and causing mischief. And so anyway, she was coming into the next year where she was going to be managing the store. And she put the little birdie, I was like, who are you thinking about for your assistant manager? And she's like, I'm going to tell you, but you're going to think I'm crazy. And she said, I want to hire Jesse. I said, well, Jesse, he's 17 years old. And I'm replaying the vivid memories I have of 17-year-old CK managing a quote, air quote, being an assistant manager of the home base store, and I'm like, I have to talk her out of this. Like, this is a bad idea. So I literally told her all the stories about my experience being a 17-year-old manager. And I tried to talk her out of it. And every time I tried to give her a reason why you shouldn't, she would hit me with a reason why you should. And I said, you know what? Like, this is exactly what my parents did for me, and you deserve this opportunity. And so I said, come hell or high water, like, let's do it. And it turns out you never made all those mistakes that I did. You just are a way better person than me. Your parents did a great job.
I definitely made my fair share.
You've made mistakes, but you've never been an idiot like I was. And to this day, like, it blows my mind, the origin story of you. And then now where we are now, fast forward, what is it, 10 years?
12.
12 years.
Yep.
12 years we're sitting here, and you're basically the leader of the Free World Halloween edition in New Mexico. And I'm so glad that you had that opportunity. And I'm also so thankful that you've had this same conduit of growth as a human being that I had, because I know how beautiful that was and how important that was to my development as a human being. And at any rate, I think it's a completely non-traditional, you tell people you do Halloween stores, are like,
yeah. There's no way to put it into words.
They're like, oh, it's like a fireworks stand. Like
Yeah.
that, I mean, it doesn't seem that hard. I'm speechless right now because, like, truly Halloween is the most amazing business of all time, just because so many times, right? Like, you work in a business and you only work in one part of that life cycle. Like, you either help start it or you work while it's open, and maybe you help shut a retailer down. But you've never seen something, you've never went into an empty store, built an absolute beautiful store, hired everybody from the ground up, built a team, like, and not only built a team, but you've built and this is where my brain injury is coming in, because I'm like having hard time accessing the vocabulary that I want. Building not just the team, but also building the vibe, the culture of a store, brand new, and then selling all this stuff, creating experience, and then having to pack it all up and turn it back in the same shape that you got it from to a landlord. And it's like the Harvard graduate crash course MBA, and nobody can prepare you for that. And every season, you get to recreate it, and you get to dissect what you did bad, what you could do better, and you get to do it all over again. And then, so it's this scientific method of business that no other retailer gets. Okay, let's do some stuff, see if it works. Let's throw some mud at the wall, see if it sticks. Oh, that worked. Let's keep that. That wasn't a good idea. Let's get rid of that. And the evolution, that's allowed this evolution of Halloween to be this amazing thing. And anyway, it's a pleasure to get to see you now learning and understanding all the things that I got to learn.
Yeah, dude. Spirit at that time, it actually changed my life. I mean, I was coming from this, I had social anxiety at a level that was just ridiculous, and I didn't see how that was ever going to change for me. You know, I mean, like, we're talking at the level where we're at McDonald's as a family, and my mom's like, go get ketchup from the counter. And that was scary. I didn't want to go ask for ketchup as a 14-year-old, you know, like it was crippling social anxiety. And I had a very similar experience to my dad's in high school, where I was at a college prep school. You know, everyone's wearing Hollister and Aeropostale, and I'm the kid who shops at Hot Topic. I'm the oddball there. And so there wasn't a ton of confidence. And my first job was just a couple months before Spirit. It was at Red Brick Pizza. And that was my first time having a manager at work, and the dude sucked. He was sadistic. I mean, like, he enjoyed being mean to us, and everyone knew it. And so that was just another thing to be anxious about all day at school, was going to work afterwards, you know. But if I wanted to be able to put gas in the car and go hang out with my 2 friends after school, I had to pay my way. So the blessing, I mean, this is one of those things you can look back on your life and you can see the thread of God's hand and how he's guided you, you know? And
yes.
So I show up one day in September after school, no calls, no text from my manager. And there's just a paper on the door saying that Red Brick Pizza has been evicted. Like, that's it. The door's locked, no heads up, nothing. Wow. And so we ended up getting paid like a week later. We had to turn our uniforms into the manager and stuff. But my mom was friends with Angelica at the time, more of a friend, but she strong-armed me into going to apply over there. And I was terrified. I did not want to apply at Spirit. You know, it was just this, at Red Brick, I could push past the anxiety because I could make the pizzas, I could do the dishes and not have to interact. But now I'm in this huge store, and I had these memories from when I was a kid of, by the way, the playlist's always been a thing in Spirit. Like, they always send the music, or did you guys at one point get to choose the music?
So since you've been there, playlists have been a thing.
Okay.
But that was all really, you know, it was such a loose organization under the Joe Marber days. It wasn't until Spencer's Gifts came and acquired Spirit Halloween that all of these kind of like systems, processes, and like they really tried to make a homogenous look and feel of stores nationwide. Before that, it was like, no, it's just like, try to sell this Halloween stuff however you can, and don't suck.
Okay.
And so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense, because when I was a kid, I had very few memories of Spirit Halloween, but the memories I had, were walking into the West Side store, and I don't remember where that was. I mean, we're talking like, you know, I was 7 maybe. I had memories of just like heavy metal playing when I would walk into the store, like scary for a kid.
Yep.
And so it was just this intimidating thing. You know, another job interview I had to go through. So I show up, I sit on a box of costumes in the back at Cutler with Angelica, and it's a real easy job interview. It wasn't as bad as I thought, and I started the next day. And you know, that was me learning customer service and work ethic that season. But fast forward to what you were just talking about, when Kim was recognizing, I don't know that she was recognizing leadership yet, but I know she was recognizing a hard worker. Like, I was proactive at that time. I did things that she didn't ask me to do just because I thought they would look better or make something easier on the team. So she gives me that shot, and I don't know what it was. I started coming out of my shell, you know? And another thing that happened at that time was my very first time stepping on stage to play guitar, like in some sort of like a rock unit. And my whole grade, parents and stuff showed up to this thing. And that was another pivotal night in Jesse's life as far as confidence, you know, and just, as corny as it sounds, believing in myself, like I'm capable of more than I thought I was. So being given that opportunity, stepping on stage for the first time was the turning point. And Spirit gave me something that I like had ownership over for the first time. And so I remember, you know, at Cutler, those 2 years as assistant manager, there was plenty of times where I was there until midnight, all the way up to like 4 or 5 in the morning, sometimes off the clock, just to get the job done, you know? And of course, there's that voice in the back of your head saying like, this could also like be recognized and could lead to other opportunities. And it did. That, you know, that paid off. But yeah, I mean, Spirit, the opportunities I've gotten from it, from you and your family, really have shaped so much of what my life is today. And my life is awesome. I love my life. So I owe you guys a huge debt of gratitude.
Mutual. You know, I can't tell you what a blessing you've been to not only myself, but our entire family. And you know, I don't want to turn this into
you want to hold hands?
Yeah. Like, but you know, you're an exceptional person, and Angelica Pinzon, for all of the shortfallings that happened that season with her, like you're like the absolute gold nugget that fell out of that season, and the blessing from the heavens that that we needed exactly when we needed it. Because as you know, it's one of those things that God puts these things in your path, and you don't even know that he's planting the seed for so much bigger things. And at that time, I could have never anticipated that our relationship and everything would grow to where it is now. But I'm so thankful it is. And you know, we've had so many conversations where you know, I think in some ways you look to me as a big brother, and like you have high, I don't know, you have high thoughts about who I am. And I can't tell
Definitely,
you,
yeah.
The same is true for you. The amount of respect that I have for you and the way that you live your life and your morals, your values, and just everything that makes up the fabric of who you are, that makes you truly exceptional. Like, I try to draw those qualities from you and add them to my toolbox. So just me being in your presence adds so much value to me. And also the fact that, I mean, you have very broad shoulders, even contrary to the fact that you're not a big man, but the amount that you can take on and the things that you're capable of is so much more. I think I tell you this all the time. You are way better at this than I ever was. And I mean that with all sincerity, because the way that you build rapport with people, the amount of tasks that you're able to accomplish with just, it seems like great ease. I always feel like I had to scratch and claw at things that seem so easy and come so naturally to you. And so anyway, I marvel at you, and I'm so thankful to have you on our team, because I think you really, like, you have elevated us. I know you've elevated us, our whole family, to a level that we couldn't have had unless you came into our orbit at 15, 16 years old. So
that's amazing, dude. That's the way that I looked at you. And so 2012 was your first year being like the DM, the guy who drove around, right?
I have no idea what year that was.
I'm pretty certain it was, which was my first year working. And so I have all of these early impressions of CK. You know, you'd show up around closing time, and you'd split up the store into like 4 quadrants between the last 4 of us there closing, and you'd have us make sure that every costume was in its place, nothing backwards, nothing on the floor. Our sections were swept, and whoever had the most perfect section at the end, you would just give like a stack of cash. You know, and you'd come in, you'd be this loud, enthusiastic guy, and you know, so I'm 16. You're how old in 2012?
I'm 36 now, and it's 2023.
Like 25.
So I'm 25.
Yeah. So at that point, I'm looking at you, and this is after interacting with you a few times. This guy who just embodies a lot of awesome qualities. I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to aim for, and someone who just like has their life together. You know, I think at the time you were still going for your master's degree. And so I looked up to you, and it's crazy to think now that back then you were younger than I am now, because I still feel like a child, you know. And it is crazy the things that we've taken on, but this idea you have that I'm doing it better, I can't see it from my perspective, and maybe I'm the one person who can't see that, because the person who was my role model is the person that's telling me that.
Amazing.
But it means a lot to hear that. So thank you. And it's a good segue into question 3, an hour.
I want to clarify something here, because if my parents listen to this podcast, I don't want them to think that I was handing out stacks of their cash.
It was like $20.
Yeah, it was like 1s and 5s.
It was 20 and 1s, and you would do the stripper shuffle.
So I had to make a big show out of it. But I remember, like, I was struggling with this. How do you inspire people to do a rather uninspiring thing, which is basically reset the store? You've had a very, very busy day. The store's been destroyed. Nothing is in its place correctly, but you want it, like, the way you end the day is the way you start the next day. And I always want to start the next day with a perfect store. But I struggled with how to motivate people to meet my expectations of what a perfectly restocked and restored store is. And so I remember coming up with that game. I should do that again. In fact, you should do that.
I did.
That was great. So I would say basically, like, you're going to start off with $80, which $80 sounds like a lot of money. Well, I know in my in my mind, like I'm going to find a bunch of stuff that's wrong. But if I can give them 4 things that are right, so I'm like, I'm going to take $5 off for everything that I find that's out of place or not repackaged right. Like the costume isn't folded around the cardboard correctly, or you've got multiple SKUs on a single peg. Any one of those that I find, I'm taking $5 off that 80. And in my mind, I know I want to give you $20. So I'm only going to find, like I was budgeting my mind, I want to give away $100, right? So I'm budgeting in my mind how many things I'm going to find wrong in your section to allow you to get to what my goal is of paying you. And so I would like make this big thing. I was like, all right, like you tell me when you're ready, when your section is perfect, you tell me, and then I'll check you out. Yeah. And I would start with that $80, and every time something was wrong, I'd take $5 and I'd put it in my pocket. And I remember, I think I paid you $80 one night because your attention to detail was ridiculous.
I could thank Aiden Sandoval for that, dude. Because he used to tell me that, well, he'd have us check our sections, and then when they were done, we could go. And I remember the very first time I totally half-assed it, and he came through with a shopping cart and filled it with stuff that was wrong. And like that one experience made Gids and I like the best recoverers was the word that we used back then.
Yeah, I came in, and I was like, I'm gonna give away $100 tonight. I remember I was like, I have to give Jesse all $80 because he didn't like miss anything. I couldn't find one thing wrong in your whole section. And if I can recall this correctly, I gave you the hardest section, which of course is makeup, wigs, weapons,
masks.
and then masks. And like there's 1,000 SKUs in that quadrant of the store. I couldn't want one thing out of place, and I'm like, this guy's bad to the bone. This guy's special.
That's hilarious. Yeah, dude. One time you had, I think I was just a store manager at this point, but you said something that left a mark on me, which was along the lines of, as the leader, you have to almost overdo the enthusiasm and the interest in the individual, like who you're talking to. And again, that's one thing I really think you're the best to ever do it. And you speak to someone with just piercing but comforting eye contact. You make them feel like they're the only person in the room, and you leave people with a smile on their face, feeling good about themselves, because you've asked more than just about the job that they've done that day. You've asked what's going on in their lives, and you show them that you care about them on a human level. But is that something you feel is almost innate just because of who your dad is, or do you feel like that's a skill that can be cultivated in a leader?
Man, that's awesome that you just said that. Is honestly, that's something I pride myself in. My goal in life is, if I was to distill it down to one thing, is to make people feel special, because they are special and they deserve to feel that way. And that's the way I want people to make me feel. And I think there's so little of that happens in society anymore. And so that's why I think it makes it seem amazing. But that's just the way that I grew up. That's the way I saw my dad conduct himself. So to answer your question, do I think if it's innate or if it's something that you can teach yourself to do? I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth. I think like you can certainly take courses, right? You can take courses on how to have conversations with people, and you can take leadership courses that teach you how to be a manager or whatever. But some of that has to be innate. Like you have to have a passion for people. And you have to, when you said kind of overdo it, I don't know that that's the case. Like, because that seems forced. That seems fake, right?
That's the fine line to walk.
And it has to be genuine.
Exactly.
Because people know, we are programmed as people to understand the difference between a genuine person and people who are gassing you up, right?
Yeah, like, we have BS meters.
100%. We're all born with it. And we've all experienced enough BS to know what insincerity looks and sounds like. And if you're just trying to gas somebody up, it's like, that comes from the tongue. But true appreciation, that comes from your heart. And people feel that. It's a difference between hearing it and feeling it. And I don't want people to hear what I have to say. I want them to feel what I have to say, because at the end of the day, like it boils down to gratitude. And you have to start with the foundation of having an attitude of gratitude. And from there, everything else falls into place. 90% of it is just starting with gratitude and understanding that I need you way more than you need me. Like this job, it'll end. Like this is a temporary job. But the last 10 days, when this job is really hard, and I've invested into you the last 8-10 weeks, you could just leave. And I'm without cashiers, I'm without floor person, I'm now the person who's stuck. You don't owe me anything. Like you show up, you clock in, you get a paycheck for the hours you work. I don't have that ability. Like this is my livelihood. This is how my family feeds themselves. Like this is what I've dedicated my whole life to. I can't leave. And I would really like it if you don't either. And the only way you do that is by building rapport. And I've learned this through so many different channels and so many different people. Of course, starting with my dad and watching the way that he conducted himself throughout his life, and giving, there's like the old saying, like, who cares about the CEO? Talk to the janitor. Like that's the guy who's actually getting stuff done. And that's how my dad's always been, right? Like he is the most loyal guy, and every person that he works with, he knows their name. So whether it's at the Verizon store, he's like, oh, that's Gabriel Gonzalez. And then, or the dry cleaner, he knows the dry cleaner's name. He knows every person's name that he converses with on a regular basis. Not the dry cleaning lady is like, no, that's Celeste. Not the janitor, no, that's Paul. Like nobody has ever been a position or anything other than their name. And so anyway, I asked my dad, I remember I was in high school and I said, Dad, like you have this amazing knack for remembering people's names. Like, how do you do that? And he looked at me and he said, CK, names are important to people. In fact, it's one of the most important things that matters to people is their names. You should remember them. I said, well, man, I really struggle with how to do that. Like, how do you do that? He's like, well, I struggle with it too. And he's like, I took this Dale Carnegie class back in the 80s that gave me some great ways to do that through anchoring concepts and things like this. And I remember the next day he came and he gave me this book, which I still have. It's this original 1980s. It was the book that he took through his Dale Carnegie class, and he had signed a note on the inside, and he's like, hope you learn as much from this as I did. And the book was called, it was written in 1939 or something. And it's this book called How to Win People or How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yep.
And
I think
now
I have that book. I've never read it.
It's like one of the most popular and one of the original like leadership things. And the whole first chapter, it talks about a dog. And basically like how, if you want to know how to make friends, like look at dogs. Because take a dog to a dog park, by the end of the day, like that dog's going to be friends with all those dogs. And so it leads kind of with that. And then it talks about just basic principles, which a lot of them honestly just come naturally to me because of my upbringing and who my family is. Of course, those type of things you can learn those and you can program your brain to give a crap about those and to concentrate on those. But like, if you don't first start with the foundation of being just grateful, you're going to be a rather uninfluential leader, because, before I was a leader, I was an employee, and I'm still an employee to this day. And I can tell you that the thing that I long for when I'm working under somebody is to be appreciated. Like, I think that's a basic human want, right? And it may be the most basic is just to be appreciated. And so many times I see people who lack the ability to appreciate it. Like, it seems like they can't be empathetic. And if you can't truly appreciate and be grateful for somebody, like, how can you lead them? And the other thing that has been pivotal to me is, so I now work at a small but growing local home builder here in Albuquerque, and the owners of that company are two men who have become some of my best friends, but they've also become incredible mentors to me because I look up to the way that they lead, and the amount of love and energy that they've poured into me over the last 12 years that I've been here. And I remember Brian, specifically one of the owners, he had taken me out to Las Vegas for this building convention show. And the most amazing trip, like, we're talking, he took me to the most highfalutin, high dollar steakhouse that you could ever go to. It was the best steak I've ever had. And I have no idea what that steak cost, but I know it was way more than I would ever be willing to splurge on a steak for myself, you know? And I was sitting at that table and I said it out loud. I said, I was soaking it in, and I'm like, my dad, who's worked his ass off, has never had a steak this good. And I said that to Brian, like, just the amount of gratitude that I had in that moment that he would invest in me at that level blew my mind. And so I asked him, I said, like, why are you pouring all of this love, energy, and like money into me? And he said, as much as I want you to think it's altruistic, it is that. Of course, I love you, but it's also somewhat selfish. He's like, he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, you can have everything that you want if you help enough people get everything that they want first. And that, again, was one of those things that I'm like, I have to figure out how to use this silly, crazy Halloween thing and do more for others than they would have had if they didn't come down this road with me. And so that's really been one of my guiding principles in the way that I treat people. When I have a conversation with you, I mean it. You're the only person that I'm having a conversation with at that time. And you should feel like you're the only person that I care about, because in that moment you are. And I live my life that way because I know how much that means to me.
God, that is like inspiring to the core. I've got goosebumps hearing that. What was that quote that Brian said?
You can have everything you want in life if you help enough people get everything they want in life.
You should get that tattooed on your chest.
Maybe that'll be my first tattoo. Maybe that's it.
Well, let's shift gears away from spirit for a while. Thank you for that story. It's amazing. The whole reason I started the We Freak Out podcast was I wanted to talk to people who had something special about their brain, their mind, the way they saw the world. If this is your first episode that you're watching, episodes 1 and 2 are me and also my aunt, who are like specifically that. But you are my first guest who's had a serious brain injury and made it out perfectly fine on the other side to tell the tale. And that's an incredible story too. Would you like to take us down that road?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a cool prompt. And by the way, brilliant foundational idea for this podcast, by the way, because
Thanks.
I think you could interview anybody, because I think everybody has something that makes their mind unique and tick differently. Otherwise, we would all just be robots, right?
Totally.
Like, everybody has something that they've acquired along the way, or something that's happened that allows them to think or process their world in a different way than you and me. And that's what makes this such a beautiful world that we live in. But to answer your question about my brain injury, and I'm sorry, because I feel like this is going to be a 2.5, 3 hour podcast.
That's awesome. That puts me in I'm going to be Joe Rogan status.
So yeah, I don't fully believe anybody's really going to want to listen to me ramble for this time.
No, they will. They'll be
hopefully-
captivated.
Hopefully they get to this part of the podcast because it's kind of a fun story. So to kind of set a little bit of groundwork about who CK is, because I think it leads to my brain injury. I have severe ADHD, and it's been something that's plagued me since I was a kid. I've always struggled with my ADHD, and I've always been a really happy kid, and I've had a wonderful upbringing, but I haven't had any systems, processes. I didn't have a lot of structure in my house, and it's kind of just like free for all. And so the result of that was I was just completely rambunctious in school, very disruptive, and my mind was all over the place. I got terrible grades. I was in special ed in elementary and like all of these different things because like I couldn't conform to the normal like classroom experience. I had no coping mechanisms to deal with my outbursts and this energy and these tics that I have. And so my parents put me on ADHD medication at a young age, like maybe 8 or 9 years old. I was on Ritalin. And I remember like it made me feel terrible. I hated the feeling of ADHD medication. And so they would call me into the nurse's office to take my ADHD meds, and I would just pocket it in the side of my cheek. And then as soon as I walk out, I'd spit it out. And God bless my parents, because here they thought I was getting ADHD meds and I was just spitting them out, and like nothing could get control of me. And it seemed the only outlet for me, and I learned this, that if I had physical activity or something that was fast paced, like it was the only time when my mind was truly focused and wasn't trying to explore my surroundings for other stimulation, right? And so they started putting me into all these sports and all these different things just to give me an outlet for my energy. And it really started helping. I started learning through sports and through motor sports specifically how to channel my energy. And when I got to middle school and high school, my parents got me a four-wheeler, and this is early Rio Rancho days. It was largely just desert out there. And we lived on the far outskirts of that time. In our backyard, it opened up to this vast open space. I mean, you could ride for hours and nothing but bushes and arroyos. And it was this amazing place to explore. And so I would go out after school every single day, and I would just ride this four-wheeler. Like, that was my thing, because I could channel my energy. I felt so much better, and then I could come back and I could do my homework. Like, I had let out all my energy, and with motorsports in particular, it's so fast. Like I anything I do fast. I drive way faster than I should, but it seems like the faster I drive, the more in flow state that I get, because the faster you get, the higher the consequences, the more you got to concentrate, and the less your mind can wander. And I seek that flow state like it's a drug, because it's so fleeting for me in my life. And so anyway, to bring it back to my head injury, I was a sophomore in high school, have this four-wheeler, and again, I'm obsessed with this thing, but I'm riding it way too fast. And so at this time, Rio Rancho is exploding. And they were, again, I've been riding my four-wheeler every single day after school, so I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've ridden this particular area. But there's some construction that's starting to happen. And so I'm riding out there. I'm with my cousin Mike, and we're blasting down this dirt path, and as fast as I could go, fifth gear, pinned, full throttle, just blazing, and know this path like the back of my hand. Well, they were building a park, and it's now where Sunset Little League is, if you've ever been down there on High Resort, and there's this big park. And off the back of that park, they did a drainage canal. It's this concrete culvert that cuts across and drains the park into the arroyo. They had just cut that, had no idea it was there. And I hit this thing as fast as that thing could hit it with my front wheels. I remember everything up until about the 15 seconds before the accident. And as the story goes and was told by my cousin who witnessed it, I hit that concrete culvert, and I was wearing jeans at the time, and thank God I was wearing a helmet because it saved my life. But the four-wheeler first did a front flip and kind of slammed me. But because I was wearing jeans, my jeans ripped and they tore onto the foot peg of the four-wheeler. So the second, third, fourth, and the following tumbles of that four-wheeler, I was stuck to it. So it gets into this kind of death roll, and it's just smashing me under it until finally my jeans ripped, and then it threw me another 80, 100 feet, and it had shattered the helmet off of my head, and I finally landed lifeless against this dumpster. And this is during the early times. Like, I had a Nokia phone that had Snake on it, and that's what I had in my pocket. The Nokia phone that I had in my pocket completely shattered, no cell phone reception. Thank God there was a adult softball game that was happening, and they see this wreck happen, and so they call for medical help, and I ended up getting flight for life.
Wow.
So I fly in a helicopter because I was at medical professionals know what this means, but I was a Glasgow 8, which is a severe head trauma. So they give you a score based on how you react to certain things, physically, vocally, basically how messed up is your brain from this. And 8 is severe. And I was bleeding out of my ears, completely unconscious, no motor skills, nothing. So I'm dead, except my heart is beating, but I'm not reacting like a normal human would. So they flight for life me to the only level 1 trauma center in New Mexico, which is University Hospital. I had no ID on me, so I was admitted as my trauma name was Trauma Vito. And so anyway, it was this massive head trauma, and so I had a subdermal hematoma is what they call it, which is basically like I had bleeding in my brain that amounted to a blood clot. Pressure is building inside of my skull. Now they need to release it. So I go in for open brain surgery. I have a scar that goes from the side of my head all the way up through the crown of my skull. And anyway, they open up your skull so that they can let the pressure out. And during this time, I'm in a comatose state, and my family doesn't know if I'm going to live. And so anyway, coming out of that head trauma and basically being dead, it was a decently long recovery process, but certainly that head trauma completely shaped the way, it gave me new lenses to view the world through, because you realize how quick your life can go. In an instant, in a second that you never thought, you're gone. And now I've been given a second lease on life. So man, you got to start living life with a little bit more purpose at that point. Or you feel like you should. God kept me around for a reason. What is that purpose? What am I going to do with the second chance? And how am I not going to take the next however many days I have left on this earth for granted? And it also it biologically reprogrammed my brain, because a part of my brain is damaged and never be the same. And so new coping mechanisms. I have terrible, especially short-term memory. And so you start living way more in the moment and documenting things way more. So I got really obsessed with cameras, and at any rate, it definitely was one of those fundamentally, it's one of those moments that fundamentally does change you.
From the time your head smashes up against that dumpster to when you wake up, how much time passes?
I don't know. I was in a coma, and then to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't remember how long it was. It was a significant period of time. that I have no recollection of. I don't even have recollection of the weeks and months after
really?
that. So I have that period of time is erased from my memory.
Wow. So I take it you didn't experience any sort of like out of body type of experience with that?
None that I can remember, but I remember during the recovery of this, feeling so grateful that I was alive in a way that I would have never had if I hadn't had that experience. So I remember feeling like I'm here for a reason now. Like, that was crazy. I never expected I was going to die, but like I can die. And now that I have this realization that I can die tomorrow, like I want to go full send on life. And so I don't know that I ever saw like a light or the pearly gates or any of that. Like I don't have any of that type of memory, but I do know that I was close and it could have happened and maybe should have happened. But by the grace of God, I'm here. And so now, like, what are we going to do with it?
Do you remember waking up?
No.
So
I don't remember any hospital. I don't remember until I get home. I remember having a hospital bed. I remember there was a period of time where I had to sleep at an angle to keep the pressure off my brain, even after being released from the hospital. And so they moved like a hospice bed, like a hospital bed that you would see in normal inpatient setting. And they moved it into my living room. And I remember sleeping in that. And I have like kind of spotty memories of that period of time. But your brain is crazy. Like, it just can erase whole periods of your time, and you'll never get them back. Like, they're just gone. You existed on this earth and you don't know that you were ever there.
That is wild. Yeah, that's not for the same reason at all, but that's an experience seconded by my aunt. She describes periods like that were like 12 to 24 hours. She'll be blow drying her hair. She'll be, her head upside down. She's blow drying it, and she comes back up and it's nighttime.
Unreal.
And she's in bed and like has no idea where the day went. Wow. So there was some parts of that recovery you've described to me before that sound pretty horrific. Like I think every 6 weeks or so, you had to get some sort of procedure done to relieve pressure, to bleed or something like that.
So you're thinking of my mouth surgery, I think.
Is that is related, right?
Where my nose would breathe. They're related, but completely different surgical experiences. Yeah. So much later in my life, when I was an adult. So as a result of that crash, of course, like when you have a massive head trauma like that, it's just like, save the life. Don't worry about all the other things that were broken or messed up during the thing. Like, at this point, let's just keep the guy alive. Well, I had messed up my jaw, and I had severe issues. Like, if I would yawn, like my jaw would just completely disconnect. I had misalignment, and then like it just didn't grow properly because I was 16 when this happened. I was still growing. So it messed up growth plates and all these different things. So like my upper palate just didn't form the way that it needed to. And so when I became an adult, the other thing that I think is important is smiling. I think smiles change the world. And so I wanted to smile at people, but my smile was kind of messed up. I never had great teeth, so I wanted braces as an adult. Well, when I went in for braces, like, well, we gotta, like, before you can get braces, we gotta reset and realign all this because like, we gotta expand your palate and get everything aligning and moving the way it's supposed to. And so I ended up having to go and get this pretty gnarly surgery where they cut open the top of, so they cut my whole top mandible off and open, and then they put this thing in my mouth, and every day you end up having to turn the little gadget in your mouth, and I remember my nose would just bleed like crazy. It was a crazy surgery. And so anyway, that's what you're referring to, those stories that I talked about that.
Dude, yeah, that's just horrific. So I remember this one time 4, maybe 5 years ago. It was during spirit season, and you told me that you were going to be off the radar for a while. And that was really all the explanation that I got. When you came back, and by the way, that's a big deal for for me to not be able to reach CK in my first or second year of having that role. So you come back and you give me this very vague description, and I'm sure the description you're going to give now is not going to be much more specific, but, can you tell me about your sending off, what you took with you, and a rough overview of what went on for those few days?
Yeah. I am going to keep it like kind of mysterious because this is something that I owe to you. Because it was a gift that was given to me that turned into one of the best gifts that I've ever been given. But Brian and Mackenzie sent me to, it's called Rapport Leadership International. And the specific course that they sent me to at that time was called Leadership Breakthrough 1. And it's the very first course in a series of courses that everything builds upon, where the whole, I think the whole goal of it is just to challenge your limiting beliefs, but also just grow as a person, right? Like, so I'm going to give you like a very 20,000 foot high altitude camel's condensed soup version of this because, in fact, my commitment is to you, and I've been telling you I'll do this, but I want to send you here before the start of this season. If you're up for it, I need to reach out to make sure that's possible. But essentially what the premise is at that time, it was at a retreat center, 90 minutes in the middle of the desert from Las Vegas. And you don't know anything about what's going on, right? Like you get bussed out there and you have very limited details about what is in front of you, which is why I want to keep this mysterious because there's so much of that is important about not knowing. But it's 2.5 days with no cell phones, no distractions, just you and your thoughts and them challenging you with you and your thoughts and your limiting beliefs and everything that creates the ecosystem that is you, your brain, and what you think makes you. And as adults, we don't give ourselves that time for that introspection. And so the gift is just that 2.5 days of introspective time to grow as a human being and see where that takes you. And so that's what I'll tell you. I mean, it was a stressful thing for me. The timing of it was less than ideal because it was in August and that was right smack dab in the middle of Halloween build out and opening stores. And it was like, I literally will not have cell phone service, Jesse. So like you gotta handle it.
I was still really figuring things out at that point.
Yeah.
And you were sent off with like a pink backpack with like some snacks or something, right?
Yeah. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
All will be known in due time beyond that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I want to wrap up the podcast with one of the most legendary stories I've ever heard from anybody. And it's the story of, this was during a spirit season. This had to be 7 or 8 years ago because I was a store manager at that time. CK used to throw what we called the banquet at the end of the year, and it would be a big party, like at a bowling alley or something like that. All the managers and all of the employees who had worked like 2-3 years plus were invited, and it was just an awesome way to put a bow on the season. I don't know if this was that big party, but it was certainly one that we were all looking forward to. We were trying to lock in a date or a time with you, and that's kind of where the story starts. So I'll hand it off to you from here.
One of my absolutely least proud moments, but it makes for a great story. And I will begrudgingly tell this to the world and expose myself because I've already shown what an idiot I am at my core. But I have this teacher of mine. He's my high school teacher. And his name is James Padilla. And he's one of my absolute favorite teachers of all time. He taught my 10th grade humanities class. And he ended up moving to California, and we've stayed in touch over the years, and he's become an amazing mentor of mine, somebody I really look up to, not only because he's an amazing Catholic and somebody who knows so much about his faith and lives his faith, but he knows so much about the arts. And so I just love picking his brain about anything from Shakespeare to tell me about this piece of art that's on the top of the Sistine Chapel. Like, he knows everything. And so we get into these really deep, wonderful conversations that I absolutely cherish in adulthood, because it seems like he did this even when I was in school with him. He called it intellectual curiosity. Nothing was ever off limits. If you were curious about it, ask him and we'll discuss it. And so the first 10 minutes of every class always started with IQ and intellectual curiosity. And you could talk about it. It was the most collegiate experience you could have while also being in high school. Like, he treated you like you were an adult. You didn't get in trouble for being curious about anything from sexuality to anything. So you build this amazing rapport with a teacher like that. And now fast forward years and years later, I'm now an adult and I've just had my first child, and it's Halloween season. In fact, Carter was born on October 12th. No, this is the next year. So Carter's 1 year barely and some change. And so Jim comes into town, and Jim's one of these guys, he doesn't give you any notice that he's coming into town. He'll just call you like, hey, I'm in town. You want to hang out? And also, like, do you have a place that I might be able to shack up? He's literally like one of these old burnt out hippies that does that type of stuff, you know? And of course, he always knows, like, of course, like, we'll make a place for you, and he's always welcome. The door is always open to you, and it's not like you need to give me a ton of notice. But now I have a kid, so things are a little bit different. Anyways, he shows up in time. It's like the worst possible time. It's Halloween season. I have a 1-year-old kid, and I'm stressed out of my mind. And also at this particular time, this is like, only 2-3 weeks before Halloween, and all of your systems start getting exposed that are failing. And at this time, we had a register that wasn't working in Farmington. And so I needed to bring a new register unit up to Farmington. So I told Jim, I said, hey, like, I'm going to be gone all day. I'm running up to Farmington. I need to handle some things up north, so I won't be able to see you. But I was like, if you want to jump in the car, I'd love for you to ride with me. And that way we can kind of chat and, like, we can have our awesome talks that I so much love and adore. Said, oh, absolutely. So we get to driving, and on the way there, he starts talking about how his father, he's been paying property taxes on a piece of property up in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, that he's never seen. His father left it to him when he died, and him and his siblings, and they've been paying on it every year. He's never stepped foot on it. He has no idea what the property looks like or anything. Well, Pagosa Springs is a little out of the way, but it's not like it doesn't ruin your whole day if you kind of take a little detour, stop through Pagosa Springs, and then circle to Farmington. So I said, Jim, let's take a little detour. Let's go check out that property, and then we'll go to Farmington, do what we need to do there. I'll handle my business, and then we'll head back, and we'll be back in Albuquerque in time for my spirit function, my bowling night that I'm throwing my employees. So best laid plans, but the results weren't exactly that. So we go to Pagosa Springs, we see his property, we have a short lunch in Pagosa, and then we're on our way out of Pagosa to Farmington, New Mexico. It's about an hour drive from there. We get about maybe 5 minutes outside of Pagosa, and Jim says, hey, we're in Colorado. Marijuana's legal here, right? I said, yeah, I think so. And I've never explored marijuana up to this point, so I know nothing about it. It's like, well, I have this great aunt, and she eats these wonderful chocolates, and she says that it helps her sleep great at night, and I would really like to try some. So without hesitation, I just turned around, and I knew where this dispensary was because it was near where my parents have a house in Pagosa. So I drive there, and I walk into my very first dispensary with my 10th grade high school teacher.
That's awesome.
And Jim evidently has messed around with marijuana, but it was like way back in the 70s. It's been a long time since he's done anything with that, with cannabis. So we go in there, neither one of us knowing anything, and there's this bud tender behind the counter, and like, what do you want? We don't know. Tell us what he should have. This is what his aunt takes. And so anyways, she suggests a couple of candy bars, and they're running this special, like get a couple of candy bars and they'll throw in a joint for free and whatever. Like, so he ends up leaving with like a baggie of stuff. And so we get out into the parking lot, and it's this kind of rectangular bar that's broken up into multiple pieces, and it was 150 milligrams of THC in this Boulder bar. We got no instructions on how much we should ingest. So we're coming at it completely blind. And I also have no idea what the effects of marijuana will be on me. So like I go into it very timidly, and so it's 15 squares, each square being 10 milligrams, right? So I eat one, Jim eats two squares. And we drive to Farmington. I do all of my business fine. I don't feel any different at all, actually. So we get into the parking lot of the Halloween store after I finished all my business. And he says, do you feel anything? I was like, not at all. I feel fine. He's like, I don't either. So he just splits the bar and the remainder of the bar in half. And I eat the other half and he eats the other half. And we get on it. And by the way, the thing was delicious. Like it was really good chocolate. So we get on the road, and it wasn't long. It was probably like 30 or 40 minutes. And I started feeling it hit me, and I started feeling really funny. And I realized that I was going these long periods where I was driving, but I couldn't remember the last time I looked at the road. I was looking at him. I realized I could only concentrate on one thing at a time. I could either concentrate on his voice talking, or I could concentrate on the road. And so I would snap back, and then I would only be locked into the road. And I'm like, okay, I've got to control this thing. And then I would have these things, and I could hear him talking, and I was starting to freak out. And then the road, the line, it kept coming in waves and hitting harder and harder. And I started getting very paranoid. And also I was having visual hallucinations where the road was starting to move. And so I looked at Jim, and I was like, I think I'm really high. Like I'm freaking out. He's like, oh, really? I'm fine. I feel fine. I was like, so this calmness hit me. I was like, thank God. Like I must have had all the THC in that bar, and he's fine. So I'm thinking like, all right, I just got to ride this out, but Jim's cool. So Jim started driving. We were in a rental car, by the way. I had rented this car for the season.
Oh, great.
And it was this Ford Escort. And so now I'm sitting in the passenger seat, just tripping out. But I'm a little bit relieved because now I'm not in control of the car. And Jim, for the first few minutes, seems fine. And then I realized this dude's getting really messed up too. So like I look at it, and he starts swatting at the dashboard, and he's like, "Oh my God, these lights, they're so distracting." And he's swatting at the dashboard. And then I realize like these cars, they seem to be passing us really fast, I look at the speedometer, and we're going like 35 on a 70 mile an hour highway. I'm like, now the panic attack hits me in hardest possible way. Like I'm not only like scared that I'm going to die, I was also scared that he's either going to die or go to jail. Because I'm like, we are out of our minds right now. So there's only one little town between Farmington and Albuquerque, and it's Cuba, New Mexico, and they have exactly one motel there. So on our way into Cuba, I've already come up with the realization there's 0% chance that I'm making it to Albuquerque, and my wife is going to murder me if she knows that I got high with my 70-year-old high school teacher while she's at home with a 1-year-old. Like, this is a disaster. So I'm like, Jim, we are going to go to this motel. I'm going to get us a room for like 4 or 5 hours. We're going to sleep this off. And then we're going to get home. It'll be the middle of the night. And my wife will never know that I was such an idiot.
And at this point, you're also getting texts from all the managers being like, hey, I got 15 people ready to go.
So my primary concern was my wife being mad at me. My secondary concern to that was I've thrown this event that I'm not going to be able to host, and nor would I be willing to show myself in this condition in front of people that are employed by me. And so I start calling people in my inebriated state, and I would call you. I called Jesse and I said, hey, Jesse, I talked to all the other managers and they don't have anybody from their store that wants to go. So I'm canceling bowling night. Then I would call the next manager and say, hey, I talked to all the other managers. There's nobody that wants to go from the store, so I'm just going to cancel it. Never in my mind did I think all of these people, like they talk to each other every day. Like they're going to like reach out and be like, I've got a full store of people that want to go. So they all cooperate with each other and realize like, no, we all have multiple employees that are really counting on going. And CK's out of his mind. Like, what is this guy doing? So anyway, next, so fast forward, I pass out. I have no idea how I even got in to rent this room. I remember sitting in the chair, in the seat of this car and feeling so heavy. And I remember thinking there's no way I can even get out of this seat. Somehow I rent this room. I set the alarm for 3:00 in the morning and pass out. 3:00 in the morning comes and I still feel fog. Like I still feel high, if I'm being honest. But like my want to get home to not disappoint my wife and own up to the fact that I've done this absolutely ridiculous thing outweighed the fact that I was still not feeling right. So I go out, I start the car, I shake Jim awake. I said, Jim, we got to go. So Jim wakes up and I remember him kind of like stumbling. I could tell he was still stoned too. And as he comes out the door of this motel, he trips over the concrete parking like barricade that you park up against, falls flat on his face. And like, it was horrific. The guy, his finger is sticking out 90 degrees. He's bleeding out of his forehead. It is a disaster. So I go and I pick up Jim and I put him in the car and I put a towel over his thing. I'm like, I got to take him to the hospital. Like, this dude's messed up. So I drive to the nearest hospital, which is in Rio Rancho, Sandoval County Regional Medical
So
Center.
he drove an hour and a half with his pinky just broken.
Well, and this guy's on
head.
blood thinners for his various health issues. So it's literally pouring blood.
I can't even imagine that. That's a long 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm freaking out. So we get to this hospital, and I remember they they're in triage and they're taking his vitals, and his like blood pressure was perfect. He couldn't believe. He's like, this marijuana stuff is incredible. He's like, my blood pressure's never been this good. And he's like so high, he still doesn't understand that his finger's sticking out sideways. And so anyways, the whole thing cascades to where I end up having to own up to my wife. Like I have to call her and say, I'm at the hospital with Jim. Like, I did this really stupid thing. I ingested marijuana for the first time, had no idea how much to eat. We clearly both overdosed. And like it led to a lot of problems. I'm so sorry, whatever. And she ended up being like way more understanding about it than I thought she'd be. I should have given her more credit about it in the first place. I should have just called her and owned up to it. But like your pride in that moment outweighs yourself. So anyway, then it was a while later that I had to fess up to you. I was like, hey, Jess, you know that time when I canceled bowling? Like, I don't like holding secrets from you. Here's what happened. Like, I want to tell you honestly that this is what happened, so you don't think I just like am lying to you, but this is the circumstance. And I remember you just laughing.
Oh, dude, it's a great story.
But it's still one of my most embarrassing, non-proud moments, but it is a great story.
Yes, it is. All right, dude, we're getting to the 2-hour mark here. It's probably a good place to call it. To wrap up, I would just like to say, of all the hats you wear, I know you consider me your brother, friend, coworker. I have to tell you that you also have been a second father figure. And you've done that with the doors you've opened for me, the opportunities you've given me, the entrusting me with your family's livelihood, and you have made my life better. So thank you for that. And, 12 years in, I can't wait to see what the next 12 years look like. Thank you for being a guest on episode 4. And that's all I got for you.
Thank you, Jesse. Like it's been an honor and a privilege, and I mean that, to be on here. And ditto to you, by the way. Like, you've been one of my inspirations, just as much as you say I inspire you, you inspire me. And I learn as much from you as I hope that you learn from me. I think that's kind of what makes an amazing, our relationship great. Like, you bring a totally different perspective than I do and outlook on life, and you're good at so many things that I'm not good at, that you help fill in the gaps. And can't thank you enough. But since you told me that, I'm going to expect you to call me Daddy.
I already changed your contact on my phone.
So if I don't see my name as Daddy in your phone, I'm be highly, highly upset.
Awesome, man. Great episode. Thanks so much.
Later, buddy.
We'll see you.